Hi everyone, welcome to the Ashe Boi Podcast. So today is going to be an emergency podcast. Now, as if everyone that's just heard of the news that's just came out last night, festivals and stuff like that's been cancelled, which is a huge shame. However, this is not going to stop me from my podcast. So what I'm going to do is film this podcast today, and then it will be released on New Year's Eve, which when it is released, it will be released on New Year's Eve. So everyone, I hope everyone's doing well, whoever's, in isolation right now and everything like that. It's been quite a unpredictable Christmas, so to say. I was very lucky on Wednesday to see the Spider-Man movie, and then the day after, the world just changed again, and masks are back on and stuff, and yeah, it's been probably the worst timing to have any sort of restrictions, which is a massive shame. But there's one thing that's not going to be cancelled for New Year's Eve, and that's my podcast. Before I released my last podcast about a couple of weeks ago, I said, well, there's probably not going to be another podcast this year because, that was before everything happened. But now, because most people are going to be staying at home or having beach parties, etc., I thought I'll do a podcast, an emergency one for now, because honestly it's been quite an unpredictable one. So one of my first topics that I really wanted to talk about is some of the Christmas stuff I got. So Christmas happened. It was such a warm day. It was about 42 degrees. It was pretty bad. So first off, went to City Beach, and that was pretty cool. It was a windy day, but just, that refreshment of going into the ocean and not worrying about anything, it was just really cool. And then, got all my Christmas stuff, and I got some presents. So some of the stuff I got a few new shirts, which is pretty neat. Got a couple of going out shirts, which is really cool. And then also I got some stuff from Nan, one of the shirts, some essentials, especially with bathroom essentials. You need that deodorant, you got to, especially when it's summer. I also got some liquid stuff. I got some lollies, and also I got $50, so I was pretty stoked with that. And yeah, I just felt really happy that day, there was nothing to worry about. Had Christmas lunch over there, and then afterwards I just played I was pretty tired because it was such a warm day that day. In Perth, it got to 43 degrees. It was pretty hot. And even Boxing Day I did nothing at all, nothing. I stayed at home, and it was 44. It was just something else. It was more than warm, it was just an absolute scorcher, because not only was it 44, it was just no wind at all. It was just still, so still. And I didn't know if I was going to faint, I didn't know anything like that. Lucky enough, aircon and fans, and a lot of people had their power out because of the heat. Lucky enough, my suburb didn't have its power out, so I was very lucky enough to be home in the aircon, just relaxing and chilling and not doing much. So that is an ultimate recap of Christmas and what I got for Christmas, and Boxing Day was just terrible. I never liked Boxing Day. Boxing Day, I'd say, is a bit overrated. But honestly, shout out to Street X for being absolute legends and selling out all their stuff. Street X is the best. And yeah, like, it's all good if you, Boxing Day, you give, presents to friends and stuff. But, I'm not someone that's like, oh, I got presents for Christmas and now I need to buy more stuff. It's like, well, I already got the stuff beforehand because I did my Christmas shopping earlier. So yeah, I was pretty lucky. And yeah, so big thing happened in the sport today. England, what the fuck you doing? Like, no joke. I'm not upset with the England cricket team for their form they did. I'm extremely disappointed. Extremely, extremely disappointed. As you can tell by my facial expression, that's how extremely disappointed I feel about England. First innings, come out, all out, 176 runs in a test match. 176 runs is a good 2020 run score, not an Ashes test match. And then Australia came in, they all got bowled out for 278. Pretty, not as good as a score, but it didn't really matter because today, England were bowled out for 68 runs. 68. And I don't have any words to describe how horrific that is. Super horrific. It was played at the MCG and, it started 10 a.m., Australian Eastern Standard Time, and there were already 4 wickets down, and they were all bowled out by an hour and a half to 2 hours. What are you doing, England? What are you doing? One of the best test debuts of all time, Scott Pollard. 6 wickets for 7 runs. And he bowled 4 overs, so he bowled 24 balls. So he got 2 wickets and over. You know how that's super bad for England? Because it doesn't matter now about the other tests because I believe it shouldn't be happening. It should be just played MCG and MCG again. Because Australia have already won it, so congrats to the Australian cricket team for winning the Ashes and ultimately dominating the whole game and the whole series. And I'm just extremely disappointed with England. They must have just lost the whole confidence, like 100%. All their confidence in the world goes down the drain, and you see a team like that that's lost all their confidence, like what happened this year with Richmond. It's pretty bad, and it's probably one of the most, I would say, the worst game of cricket I've seen England play ever in my whole life. And I'm not going to swear. I've already said my swear. It's just atrocious, really. And they need to refresh. They need to get a new team, because I don't know what they were doing at all. And if it's just because what's happening in the world, I don't know. It's just a shame. It's just crap, because Ashes is very prestigious, Cricket is very prestigious. A lot of people love it and a lot of people don't like it. I'm sort of in the middle. Like, I love watching cricket, but not a fan of watching it in the TV. And I'm still pretty disappointed that there's no cricket games in Perth, and I couldn't work. So, but the good thing is I got another job, and that was my first job, and I got a lot of shifts for them. So lucky me. The future of the Ashe Boi Podcast. So what I'm going to be bringing to the table for the Ashe Boi Podcast, it's going to be a lot more guests. I really hope so. Really hope there's going to be a lot more guests. Hopefully I can save up so I can buy a camera, a tripod, and even just a microphone to start off with, and then a camera, and then a tripod, set it up and start filming. Then hopefully when I saved up more, I can get an editing program, start learning how to edit my own videos, because right now I'm just doing it raw, fresh, unedited, very raw podcast, nothing's edited, so it all comes out. It all comes out on this podcast, because whatever happens in this podcast stays in this podcast. And hopefully more people start subscribing, because honestly, my TikTok is blowing off the past, since November. Just everyone's loving my clips. I've been putting up those clips and it's just going off. So what I'm going to be planning to do is send my clips to myself, and then on my laptop I'm going to create a second channel, and all my clips are going to be put onto my second channel. So if you don't feel like watching a full podcast and you're sort of watching my TikToks and you want to go onto the YouTube platform, you can watch it on the YouTube clips. And if you really love that podcast, you can follow me at the Ashe Boi Podcast, and my second channel is going to be the Ashe Boi Podcast Clips. So if you love my content and you don't feel like watching the whole podcast, you can just watch a couple of clips and that will make your day. So yeah, that's sort of my plan for my podcast and what I want to do with it. Especially for 2022. I don't know what's going to happen for 2022. Might not be as exciting. So home podcast is going to be a big thing for next year if I can't go anywhere, even if something drastic happens, because I don't want to say anything, can't say that word because I don't want my video taken down. But if anything dramatic happens and I have to stay inside, then podcast is going to be a big outlet for me. If I don't have any work going on or anything like next year, because I'll be doing TAFE, so it's going to be a big thing going into next year that I keep doing my podcast. I love talking to people, I love being with people, and I love going and seeing people. I love my networks, and I love all you guys that have subscribed and liked my videos, because this is just going to help me in terms of what I want to do next year and the next few years. If I want to still continue doing YouTube, still continue doing videos, and if I receive that feedback sandwich and if people give me feedback on the comment section or on Instagram at legend_ace2k21, and that will be changed to 2, so it'll be 2k22. So hopefully people really put in the effort to ask any questions, ask any queries on anything, because today I wasn't meant to send a podcast. I wasn't meant to do podcasts this year, but I'm only doing it because of what's been happening in the world, so that people can do something on New Year's Eve. So right now I'm going to do another segment. Guys, make sure you drink water. Water is an essential service. So I'm going to be talking about recapping what an amazing year it's been for me, some of the highlights that I've done from January to right now. So pretty much, started the new year, 2021, coming out of 2020, didn't have a job at all. And I was volunteering at a charity shop, just, doing 3 days a week, just to gain some skills and abilities so that I could get a job in the future. And around January, I didn't know what was going to happen. I've already, applied for TAFE for that first semester, and, finished high school, just fresh out of high school, and I didn't have many friends because I was starting a new chapter. It was a bit scary. And then got through January, and then the world changed, and I was at home. I was at home for probably 5 days or something like that. And then I was able to start TAFE a little bit later, at the start of February. So I started TAFE, and when I had my orientation day for that, I met a couple of friends that I met at the orientation, and now they're lifetime friends. So shout out to Bryden and Bo, absolute legends. Hope you guys listen to this when it's uploaded onto YouTube. That was a historic day, that day, going in, not knowing anyone, and then meeting a couple of people with the same interests. And it was a little bit weird wearing mask at TAFE, because that was the first time wearing a mask at all, so that was a bit weird. And then when we got to take them off, it was like we finally got to see facial features of someone, and we got to smile again. So that was really cool. And then got through that first month of Feb, met some lecturers, met some new people, which was really cool, building those connections. And then in March, went to my first 21st, Bryden's 21st, and Bryden, guys, he's the guy that did the Star Wars podcast with me, so hopefully he can come on soon during the break. And went to my first 21st. That was an amazing 21st. It was a few days before my birthday, so it was so good. And then birthday came around, and it was on a Good Friday. It was a public holiday, which was so fucking amazing. I absolutely loved that it was my birthday on a public holiday, and I had the house to myself. I could do whatever I wanted. And then around mid-April, I was lucky enough to get my first job. And then I was about to do my first shift, and then wow, I was at home again for undisclosed reasons, and I had to start work again in May. But during that same time, I got my first job, I got my second job, which was absolutely amazing. So I got 2 jobs in a week and a half. And I started, doing work during the May period. And then I started my second job around June, and I did a one-off shift for general catering at Optus Stadium for Eagles and the Richmond game, and that was pretty cool. It was a pretty good experience, but that was just a one-off because they needed more workers and they needed some help. And I was going through TAFE. I finished that Cert 3 around late May, early June. I was pretty proud of myself, and I applied again to do my Cert 4. And then afterwards, after I did that one-off shift, I started working for Premium Catering, and it's probably one of my favourite jobs that I've ever done. And I'm going to talk about later for one of my favourite shifts that I ever done in my life. And then July came, I had a bit of a holiday break. I started buying shirts. Friendly Geordie shirt is amazing. Started again on July the 19th. But before that, around May, early June, that's when I started doing this podcast. So it's close. I'm probably around the 6 to 7 months of this podcast becoming a thing. So hopefully I continue doing this into next year, because it's going to be big, especially in the winter when if people love podcasts, people love videos, they need something to watch, especially if someone's isolating. So if you're in isolation right now, chuck on the Ashe Boi Podcast. I really recommend. And then there was an historic day in June the 4th, exactly. I sent in a question on a particular podcast called The Being Human Show. And the question that I sent in, and it's already been on their podcast, it was on their podcast. I sent in, it was just about, an AFL question. It was about Eagles. Is West Coast Eagles going to drop the top 8? And on the Being Human Show podcast, Lockie Hara and his close mate Evan Gosney were on it, and my question was popped up on there, and Evan stated my Instagram name, and I was pretty stoked that they said my name on my podcast. It was the first time I was recognised on YouTube as Ash, and just my name and my podcast. That was really cool, being recognised. And even before then, a few months before, a confession was sent. I sent in a confession to the Jammer and Dylan podcast, and podcast 73 was the podcast that was sent in. So if you want to watch that, follow Jammer and Dylan and watch Poddy 73. I'm not going to say the confession I make, because it's very, very, very fucked up. But yeah, June 4th, historic day, probably the most historic days for the YouTube and how it was growing. And this was before I had TikTok, but I wasn't doing clips. And then, July happened in August, and I was just busy doing, a lot of TAFE stuff. I had a lot on my plate. So I didn't really had time to do a lot of YouTube, so I needed to take an extended break so I could do a lot of my TAFE stuff, and I needed to do my work placement, and then I also needed to work as well. I was super busy throughout the winter. So when it hit September, I was able to work at the grand final. Now, to describe the day, it was a beautiful day, not cold at all. It was a nice warm day, blue skies. And then it actually rained later in the day, which was fine. It was a grand final day. I got there at 11:45, and it was just amazing. There was vans, there was so many people around. The atmosphere was amazing. They lit up the bridge. That was super amazing. And then I came in and I did probably the biggest shift that I've ever done. And I saw a lot of famous people, a couple of Eagles players. I saw one of the Channel 7 host people in one of the corporate rooms, because I was just doing drinks and stuff to all the rooms. And wow, I can't describe how much the grand final was such an amazing shift, because I felt super lucky and super privileged to work that day. It was the best work shift that I ever worked at. It was one of the best days of my life. I've never been to a grand final before, and I was so stoked when Gillon McLachlan announced that there was going to be a grand final that day. And yeah, it was just so amazing. Like, not gonna lie, not gonna joke, best day of my life, without a doubt. And I watched, I watched a bit of the game while I was working, and honestly, it was super good. And then watching Melbourne win their first premiership since ages ago. I don't want to get my dates wrong. I think it early 1960s, like 1964 or something like that. So they hadn't won a grand final in so long, and I watched a team that played amazing, and Melbourne Demons completely deserved to win that grand final. So that day happened, and that was just amazing. And then October came around, and I was doing a lot of stuff for work placement, and then I finished my work placement, and I was drained. The last 5 weeks of TAFE was draining. I was tired. I was burned out. I didn't know. I was just going crazy. That was a crazy period. A lot of busy times, and I was able to get through all that. And then during November, I took a lot of self-care time, and that's when I started doing a YouTube channel again. And then I realized, well, a lot of people, especially some of the podcasts they watch, is they put clips onto TikTok, and then what TikTok does, it just blows up. So what I started doing was putting some YouTube clips onto TikTok, and holy crap, the views on those clips, absolutely amazing. More than 100 people, more than 200 people. And for someone that is on the spectrum, and someone that is only 19 years old, and my audience is starting to grow, it's just unreal. Even just for one view or even 5 views, it doesn't matter. It's still growth. It's still something. And that's what I'm really proud of myself, and what I've achieved. Because I've achieved so much in the current circumstances in the world. I was able to see some of my favourite comedians, not once, not twice, but 3 times. I was super lucky to go to a couple of gigs. I was super lucky to go to an AFL grand final. I was super lucky to finish my TAFE course for both Cert 3 and Cert 4. I was super lucky to build my networks up for the YouTube, and meeting those people, going to gigs and meeting new friends and work colleagues. Building those networks has improved my mental health, especially for someone like me who can be quite socially awkward because of me being on the spectrum, ASD. It can be hard sometimes. I got told, and you can watch on the first podcast, getting told by a doctor, like, oh, you're not going to graduate. Well, look at me. Look where I am right now. I graduated from high school. I completed my Cert 3. I completed my Cert 4. Now I'm going into diploma next year. I got 2 jobs. I'm earning a bit of money, and I'm helping out financially, And the next couple of years, I'll be, once I start earning a little bit more, I'm going to be paying the tax. So, I'm starting, progressing from being a teenager and a young adult to being an adult, and taking a lot of that responsibility, and, when I do all these YouTube videos, I treat it as a full-time job. And if this channel grows and people love my content, both on YouTube, on the TikTok, and people love what I do, and I bring a smile to everyone's faces, and then I'll be stoked. Because there's one thing that I've learned, throughout my life, because I love, bringing happiness to people. However, true happiness comes from self. And if you are happy as a person, and you are doing all good mentally, physically, emotionally, and socially, and you build those networks so you have connections throughout whatever you do, your life is going to skyrocket. Your life is going to go up. There's going to be hurdles. There's always going to be hurdles in life. There's always hurdles in life and roadblocks. But if you come across a roadblock and you go, okay, well, that's fine, and I can work out an alternative way where I can go back to where I was, then you'll be where I am currently today. And to everyone that's watched this podcast from when I started, from podcast number 1 to now, I've really appreciated all you guys' support. I've really appreciated everyone that has liked and comment and loved my videos and loved the content that I do. So the direction of the podcast that's going to be going into the new year, it's going to be a little bit more serious. There's going to be some podcasts which is going to be about mental health, and then there's going to be some podcasts which is, a bit of banter, a bit of sport, a bit of fun times, a bit of vibes. And I would love if, people start sending in topics, start sending voice messages, start sending in topics to discuss, because that's just going to build the channel, that's going to build an audience of people that love podcasts, love clips, and love YouTube, because, I'm only going to just grow one step at a time, and that's what I'm doing now. And when you're doing podcasts, I've realized that your first 20 podcasts are going to be the hardest podcasts you ever make, because you've got to start from the beginning. And once you start investing, once you start saving up, then you can get the resources that you need to grow. And I'm only 19, and if I keep growing into like 2022, 2023, 2024, it's only going to get better and better. The quality of the podcast, the audio of the podcast, and everything like that, it's going to grow. And I hope to achieve that in the coming years. Let me check if I have anything to talk about. Yeah. So I don't really want to talk about the negativity about what's happened, because that's not going to be good for the podcast. I want it to be quite informative, quite a heartwarming podcast where I can describe what's been happening with my life, and you guys can comment below what you want for the podcast. So everyone, thank you so much for watching this podcast this year. I'm going to be back next year with better videos, better content, and a lot more guests. So if you love my podcasts, please subscribe to Ashe Boi Podcast. Subscribe, like my videos, comment and share to your family so they can watch it. And before I put this video up on the YouTube, I'm going to create a new YouTube account, which is going to be on my laptop, called Ashe Boi Podcast Clips. So for new audience members from TikTok, and if you're not a big fan of watching a full podcast, I'll be putting up my clips on that second channel. So everyone, I really hope you enjoyed the Ashe Boi podcast this year, and I hope to see you again next year. Love you all, stay safe, and much love. See you later, Ashe Bras, Ashe Boi podcast fans. Lots of love.